Is Your Audio Sound? Installment 3, Sensory Feedback. This is a podcast for people doing audio in church. The ideas are relevant in all live sound applications, but the words and examples I use are mostly from the church context. I'll try to avoid using technical jargon and use everyday words in an attempt to make what seems complex a little easier to understand. We begin this installment with feedback, the audio kind. I've described in another installment what feedback is, and again, it has a lot to do with vibrations, in this case, oscillation. So the sound comes out of a speaker into the microphone, out of a speaker into the microphone, out of the speaker into a microphone, faster and faster and faster, and then we get squeeze. The first action to deal with feedback is that we change the physical positioning of that microphone and that speaker. We move them apart. Some simple do's and don'ts. Never stand in front of a speaker with a microphone, and always have the microphone pointing away from the speaker. These simple physical steps are the beginnings of managing our feedback problems. Some quick tips on recognizing the source of feedback. If the feedback is instant, it just comes from nowhere and takes you by surprise. It's most likely created on stage, possibly by a singer dropping their arm and pointing their microphone straight into a foldback speaker. Ouch! It could also be an acoustic guitar being put on a stand, which is much closer to a foldback speaker than when Larry was wearing the guitar. If the feedback slowly builds, a little like an oncoming train, it's probably generated by the front of house. It slowly builds, then grows and grows, and then gets a mind of its own. My guess is you need to look at your headset, lapel, or lectern microphone as the likely culprit. So let's move on to radio or wireless microphones. This is a jargon thing. Wireless microphones are just that, wireless systems. They then come in a number of form factors, all of which can be found in wired form factors as well. The microphone end, usually called the transmitter, sends or transmits a radio signal. The transmitter can be found in two form factors: handheld, think gelato ice cream in a cone, or a body pack. That's the box that clips to your belt, similar in size to a tape measure. The body pack can then sport a number of attachments, for example, a headset, or a clip-on lapel mic, or even a 6.5mm plug and cable to receive signal from a guitar or a bass. The second component of a radio microphone is the receiver. Surprisingly, this receives the radio signal and converts it into a standard electronic signal that the mixer will recognize as a microphone signal. Receivers are almost always mains powered and have antennas either on the receiver unit or remotely via special cables. In some more professional systems, you may see multiple receivers in a single casing sharing both power supplies and antennas. So just to reiterate, the term radio microphone refers to a microphone system with no cable. The form factor is an additional descriptor. For example, a handheld radio mic is an ice cream cone with no cable. A headset radio mic is a headset microphone cabled to a body pack, but there is no cable from the body pack to your sound system. So let's launch into a new topic: balanced and unbalanced cables. This might be unfamiliar, but it's a really important concept to understand and can be quite confusing because the same connector can be used to do different things. An example of this is a 6.5mm phono or jack plug, which can have two electrical contacts, called tip and sleeve, but also referred to as mono, M-O-N-O, which means not stereo. An almost identical 6.5mm jack or phono plug can have three electrical contacts, called tip, ring, sleeve, also referred to as a stereo connector. This connector can be used for a balanced signal, described shortly, or it can be a stereo signal, i.e. unbalanced left and right signals shared in a common cable and sharing a common shield, also known as a common earth. Confused yet? Let's try some more information. You'll notice that the cables we generally run from a microphone to a mixer, and possibly the same type of cable that we use from a mixer to a powered speaker, has a connector at both ends with 3 pins or sockets, which is 3 electrical contacts. You'll also notice that a cable with a 6.5mm connector, or a guitar cable, has only 2 electrical contacts, tip and sleeve. At this stage of my description, I normally wave my hands around to aid in the visual description. So without those, I'm going to try and paint a word picture to illustrate what I'm explaining. What I am describing is the difference between a balanced and an unbalanced cable. There's technicality behind this that I won't get into here, but audio signals need to be continuous. The signal needs to run from the microphone to the mixer and back to the microphone. It needs to be a circular path. This continuous path requires a wire to go down and a wire to come back on. So what is happening in a microphone cable with 3 pins is that the signal is running back and forth in the middle of the cable using 2 wires twisted together, and it has a 3rd pin which connects to a metal braided shield around the twisted back and forth wires, which connects to both the microphone and the mixer. So effectively the case of the microphone is a shield and the case of the mixer is a shield, and the mic cable has a shield that continues the protection while signals travel between them. A 3-pin microphone or signal cable is called a balanced cable. In the case of a guitar cable, which only has 2 electrical contacts, we have an unbalanced solution. We have the back and forth signal running down the middle of the cable and back, but its return path is actually travelling along the shield, which is the outside of the cable. So if you think of a balanced cable where there is some electronic noise nearby, maybe a fluorescent light is creating some spurious electronic noise. In a balanced cable, the shield is protecting the internal signal wires from that noise, where in an unbalanced cable, the shield is actually part of the signal path, so it really can't protect the inner wire from that electronic noise. The practical outcome of this is we want to use unbalanced cables, for example guitar cables, as little as possible. We want as little exposure to noise as we can, so it's good practice to use short, unbalanced cables, for example 3 meters long, into a local direct inject or DI box. And from that point to the mixer, use a balanced cable. You can use a DI for any instrument that has a 6.5 socket, for example keyboards, acoustic guitars, bass guitars. You can also use a special laptop DI for the audio out of your laptop or computer. If you think about a laptop, it has a 3 electrical contact connector. So it is a 3.5mm tip ring sleeve connector. But in this case, it's a stereo connector, not a balanced connector. It is actually 2 unbalanced cables combined into one, with both left and right signals sharing a common shield. You will possibly notice that on a 3.5mm plug associated with a phone, sometimes you'll get a tip, a ring, a second ring, and a sleeve. This is not something we find in professional audio, but it is used in the mobile phone world as a separate control circuit. So there we are. The sensory feedback installment has come to an end. In other 10-minute installments, we're going to talk about drummers and tea towels, running cables to good effect, and black t-shirts. If you haven't listened to installment 1, please do, as it's the starting point to launch from. All others are optional, but in a suggested order. Many of the ideas do overlap and should help you on your journey. But until that day comes, I will go and warn the darkness that the light of Jesus Christ has overcome.